Good evening, and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We are here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay family, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Our topic on tonight is missing and murdered Indigenous women. We have with us our co-host, Carrie Hardy, and our guest for the evening is Mary Weaselbear. Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. If you have resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, local organizations, or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And with that, Carrie, I would ask you if you would greet our listeners for tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Hardy, and I'm so thankful that you guys are listening tonight. As you mentioned, my name is Carrie, and I'm a writer, and I love writing about women's experiences and highlighting women's voices and their journeys. And that's what I'm really passionate about. And I really want to thank you guys for listening in tonight and hearing stories of our guests.
And Carrie, what's your contact information for your editing and,
My email is imagesattainable@gmail.com. So it's images spelled phonetically and then attainable. So imagesattainable@gmail.com, no space.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mary, thank you for being with us again on tonight. And for our listeners who you may be new to, would you please introduce yourself?
I am my father's daughter. I am the beauty of my mother. I am the strength of my sisters. I am the courage of my aunties. I am inspired by my nieces. I am resilient like my grandmothers. I am your daughter's friend, and I am a voice that will not be silenced. My name is Mary Weaselbear. My Lakota name is Owia Pia, which translates to woman who wins. My parents are Connie and Pansy Tubus Weaselbear. My Hunka parents are Kevin and Marge Blackout Tubus. And we come from the number 4 Payabia community on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, where I also work as an advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous women, and I also work for the youth of Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us, Mary. Thank you so much. So, listeners, we want to start the evening with sharing some resources. First, we have the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. Their website is www.niwrc.org. We also have Native Love. Their website is www.niwrc.org/Native Love. We have Native Alliance Against Violence, Oklahoma's Tribal Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Coalition, Tribal Technical Assistance Provider. Their website is oknaav.org. And with that, listeners, our topic on tonight, missing and murdered Indigenous women. So on tonight, I didn't want to just share numbers and statistics. I mean, even though that information is important, it's hugely important. But Mary, I wanted to ask you to share with us those points that you think are important to get across tonight.
I was watching, I don't know if you guys seen on 2020, they have the Gabby Petito. They put this little documentary together on Gabby Petito. Mm-hmm. And for a brief second there, they talked about women of color and how we don't get the national attention that white women get, I guess you could say. And so I feel like no matter how much we go out and talk, and I still feel like we're not being treated like humans. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I feel like working with my kids and educating them, I feel like I'm giving them that knowledge and that power to be a voice. Because they have really wide social media platforms that the kids are into. And so I'm trying to educate them and educate them so that they can use their social media platforms to bring advocacy to our women, not just Native women, but all women of color.
Yes.
And so that's something that I think is really important. And then another, the awareness and the advocacy is by far the most important that we can do. Talking about these women, making sure people know their names, even if it's just me sharing with you and Miss Carrie, you're gonna pick up another name, and I hope that it sticks in your head to where you're like, I need to help, not just as women or women of color, but as humans.
Yes.
So that's where I really hit hard on the advocacy and awareness.
Are there personal stories that you would like to touch on and share with the listeners? Like I remember your friend, I remember your sister-in-law. So are there would you like to speak of their stories, or are there additional stories and families that you would like to speak on, to share on tonight?
There's one family that reached out to me, and they're from Porcupine, South Dakota, and their 13-year-old daughter went hitchhiking from the reservation to Rapid City, which is, I want to say, about 64 miles, the distance. And her name was Katrina Prettybird. And so, and she's been missing since 1998. And this is the first time I've heard her name. Not too familiar with her. But, I've been in communication with her mother and her father, and just, again, it's just the advocacy, just awareness, and just saying her name and hoping people hear it or it triggers something. And then, we talked about my friend Lakota Renville last time I was on the show. And like I said last time, any opportunity for me to say her name is a good opportunity. So me and Lakota have been friends since we were teenagers, and we were fortunate enough to bring her home and bury her. The unfortunate part is we don't know who did that to her. So we're still seeking justice for Lakota. On October 25th is going to be 18 years since she was brought home. And then obviously we talked about my sister-in-law, Susan, Fast Eagle, Chief Eagle, who's been missing now for about a year and a half out of Rapid City, South Dakota. And when I think about my sister-in-law, I get really frustrated and angry because the law enforcement in Rapid City isn't doing what they should be doing as far as running down tips and leads. It's basically down to a very few of us in the family that are focusing our efforts into trying to bring her home. I don't know how we're going to bring her home, but I know someday we will bring her home. And then at the time in February, we also had this other young lady who was missing, Mrs. Tia Long Soldier. And Shayna, there was also another young lady, Shayna Youngman. And man, it was just really tragic what happened to them. But in our efforts in my movement and with my youth program, We Choni Wakan, we hope to, we want, the focus is to empower their kids and our kid, all kids of of our tribe, to empower them so that we prevent these, so that they don't become another name. So if we can empower them, educate them, and bring awareness to them, then hopefully through our program, they'll start to see that they don't need to live these lifestyles how these women lived them. And I'm not discrediting any of the women. I'm really not. But if they make every one of their deaths, I can honestly say were preventable. The situations that they got themselves into were preventable. And I feel like for me, working with these kids and letting them know who T.I. is, letting them know who Lakota is and Susan, and they think about it and they're like, I don't want to end up like that. And that's where I'm with the kids on that sense, and empowering.
So when you say that their deaths or some of these deaths were preventable, it makes me think of just particular lifestyles that individuals could be involved in. And I think of drugs and alcohol, or just wayward young people. So, and as you said, whatever a person is involved in, whichever way that they're leading their life, that is no right for someone else to step in and cause them harm. That is no right for someone to step in and actually kill or murder an individual. But in thinking about some issues that could be prevented, when you're dealing with the youth in your program, are there parts of your program to help divert them from issues such as drug addiction and alcohol and running away from home? So are you able to meet, or do you speak to those specific issues in your program with the youth?
So I don't advocate. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way, but I guess what I tell our youth, that the choices they make, the consequences, they're going to have to pay those consequences. And another thing is, so a lot of the kids that I work with, they come from really broken homes, and they're not given the tools to process their feelings, to process that anger. They're not empowered like, oh, I'm proud of you, or things like that, So I try to help them create we try to help them create a space where they feel like they're safe enough to show those emotions, but also be praised. And the way I see it is, if we create those spaces and they come home to their homes, I hope that we as a team gave them tools to react in a positive way, or to get away from the situations that they're coming home to. Does that make sense?
Yes. And can you tell us the name of the youth program again?
It's called Wichoni Wakan, WICONI WAKAN. We've been operating since 2009 here in the number 4 Peabia community. And we just filed for 501c3. So we're still working on that part. But like I said, we've been operating since 2009. So, and the direction that we try to go with the youth program is the direction that the kids are leading us in. So, there's times, if we go on a trip or if we do something, it's like, you lead us and do whatever you want, but do it within reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you'll figure it out. If something doesn't work for you, then you're not going to do it the next time. But if something works, you're gonna build off of what works. Right. So I'm pretty like, I go with the flow, And sometimes I have to use my auntie voice and be like, come on, you guys chill out, but it's not too often. And I feel like giving them that leadership, those leadership roles, is just, nothing compares to it.
Awesome. That sounds great. So I want to ask you another question, and then Carrie, I'll go to you for a question or comment. So Mary, we last talked in February. I'm almost afraid to ask this question because I really already know the answer. But what, if anything, has changed for better or worse since that time in dealing with missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives?
Well, I can honestly say since the last time we talked, we haven't had any other young ladies or women come up missing on the reservation.
Okay.
Obviously we're still battling with the downside or the bad side of the reservation, which I shouldn't even say that way. The negative things.
Yes.
So, but we see a drastic change within the youth that we have been working with.
Carrie, you have a question or comment?
Hi, Mary. I wanted to ask you, I was reading on MMIW earlier, I think maybe earlier last week or the week before that, and there's a statement or an idea that the media, the mainstream media is kind of putting out is that it's primarily Indigenous men who are causing this epidemic within Indigenous communities of missing women. And a lot of Indigenous people from a multitude of tribes have been saying that is not the case. And I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit to that myth, or what do you think of that statement? Can you tell me your experiences with that?
From my own perspective, I would say a lot of the women that are being murdered here on Pine Ridge are being murdered by tribal members. And there are quite, like my friend Lakota, we don't know who she was murdered by. She was murdered in Kansas City. I actually just talked to her mom this afternoon. But anyways, for the most part, I could say that 80% of the cases here on our reservation are by somebody they know, a tribal member also.
And I was speaking to another woman. I can't remember. I know that she's Lakota, but I don't remember which, I can't remember the specifics of it. But I can't remember her name either. But the meaning of it is like women. I think it was woman that flies with eagles, or I think that was the meaning of her name. But she was talking to me about how women on the women when they're on no now I remember, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So there has been a loss of culture and teaching, and a lot of loss of the different roles and the ways of the people that have disintegrated. And she was talking to me about how that she feels as that's contributed to the MMIW crisis. I was also talking to another non-binary person. They're not two-spirit, but they are non-binary, and they use she, her primarily. And she was saying that gender, this kind of idea of like stark male gender, and then there's like the woman gender, and then like the male dominates the woman, and it's like that wasn't necessarily how it was. She is Diné, so I know it's different all over. But can you talk to me a little bit about how do you feel like in different Indigenous communities, I guess, losing their ways and losing their cultural ways, or not being able to practice those ways because of historical oppression? Do you feel like that's contributed to the MMIW crisis?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Like we were, I'm going to be doing a presentation next week with the kids at the youth shelter, and we're talking about historical trauma.
Mm.
Like historical trauma, historical oppression. But I definitely agree that in a sense that it has hindered a lot of people from growing spiritually.
Mm.
And you mentioned what the Danae lady said, where we didn't have these titles, I guess you could say, female, male, non-binary. I believe that a lot of tribes, from my understanding, a lot of tribes are matriarchal societies. So our women were held to a higher, they were put on a pedestal, and everything that the tribes and the men would like want to do or, plan to do or whatever, they would always come and talk to the women. And when we go back to historical trauma, we're talking about when the Europeans or the settlers or the colonizers, whatever we want to label them, seeing how our people held our women to such high standards that to me, and my research is like, they had to come and break us down as women to overpower our tribes and our people and our indigenous communities. But I totally agree. A lot of it comes back to historical trauma.
Mm. Tia, did you have anything?
So, Mary, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we had Aaron Mitchell on the program not too long ago. Aaron is one of the co-founders of House of the Moon. I believe that you participated in her program. If you did, can you talk to us about your participation and how that was for you?
So House of the Moon, let me see. Last April, I got an email from this lady named Shally Flyant. Me and Shally go way back. Like, she's been one of the ladies that I really looked up to, She's just a powerful, powerful woman. And anyway, she's like, hey, we got this House of the Moon training coming up, I checked out the website, and the whole experience, like, at first I was intimidated. We got women in there that are just like chiefs on First Nations in Canada, we got karate woman, and then there's me, and I'm like, wait now. So I was a little intimidated. I was like, I don't think I'm that, I don't think I have that power. But once we start going, we were able to, we talked about like lateral violence, historical trauma, finding that power within, calling back your spirit. Really good. Her name is Elaine Alec. I would suggest for any female woman to take her course. Beautiful, beautiful woman. And then we did some self-defense. And this year we were fortunate enough to have our retreat in Yellowstone National Park.
Awesome.
Which was really, really, really cool, because to finally be around all these women, it was just, oh my God, there's just no words to explain it. And then so for me personally, it's like, I finally get to bring those tools back to my community. So I'm starting, next week, I'm going to start doing these presentations in different areas around my community. I've been working on that and setting up locations, these past few days. And I don't have anything bad to say about my experience with House of the Moon,
Awesome. So you've become one of the facilitators of the program.
I did. Actually, will be done October 10th. Well, so we have to complete these next 6 trainings by October 10th. Mm-hmm. But when I'm done, yeah, we're gonna run with this.
Awesome. Luv Bay, we want to welcome you again to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, with a replay on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. Also Thursdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. And Luv Bay, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. A few more resources that we wanted to share with you. Ontario Native Women's Association. Their website is www.onwa.ca. Their email address is onwa@onwa.ca for more questions or information. And their phone number is 1-800-667-0816. We also have Strong Hearts Native Helpline. Their website is strongheartshelpline.org. Their phone number is 1-844-762-8483. And then we have the Canadian Women's Foundation. Their website is canadianwomen.org. Their phone number is 1-866-293-4483. And their email address for more information is info@canadianwomen.org. So, Mary, I believe that May is designated for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Is it a specific date or is it the entire month?
Sorry, I'm fighting a cold. May 5th is that got passed through Congress, which is to honor Hannah Harris, who's a Northern Cheyenne tribal member who was murdered in Lame Deer, Montana. And so Senator Daines from Montana pushed that through Congress to make that a national holiday. So people do, a lot of different organizations do activities and awareness and classes leading up into May 5th.
Okay.
So,
are there any specific or upcoming efforts to raise awareness that are coming up that listeners could participate in now?
At the moment, not that I know of, or not that I have anything planned. You know, there's always people advocating and bringing awareness, but right now, for me personally, I don't.
Okay. I remember the cross-country bike run that you did. Would you be participating in that again? Is that a yearly event or is that?
I was hoping it would have been a yearly thing. This year, Dwayne Garvey, who organized it last year, the sponsorship fell through for us. So we weren't able to get out on the road. But there is a lady who's out on the road from the Navajo Nation who is going to Washington, D.C. Her name is, her handle is Trailing Emma, I believe. But she's a Dene Navajo lady whose her auntie went missing from her own home on the Navajo Nation. And she just felt like her story would be more powerful traveling to D.C. to try to get more attention onto it. But right now she's in Kentucky. So, I mean, she's always going to need some support. You know, she needs that support too. There's been families that have been traveling with her across. I spoke to her a couple times, but I really wish I could jump up and go catch up to her, but it's not going to happen this year.
Carrie, do you have a question or a comment?
I wanted to ask you about, just within your own, are you Lakota Oglala? Mary?
I'm Oglala Lakota.
Oh, Oglala Lakota, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So within your experiences or like how you grew up, do you feel like, you talked about the youth feeling like they're very repressed or like they can't express themselves. Do you feel like that is something that, because like, for example, me, or at least where I grew up, it was kind of like mental health was not, there are some people I was around like mental illness does not exist, you know, and it's not really something to talk about. Like, why are you sad? Nobody even died. Like,
right.
Why are you upset? So did you grow up with any type of those sentiments, or do you feel like it's more of a case by case thing with the youth feeling like they can express or something like that?
I feel like it's a home by home basis. I've been very fortunate to grow up in a 2-parent home where I wasn't told, shut up, quit crying. Why are you crying? I was fortunate enough to be able to express myself. And but a lot of the kids that I do work with, they do suffer with a lot of mental anguish. I mean, it's really wide. Mental health issues. So.
Well, Carrie, I understand because it wasn't a one-off thing. Like when I was growing up, that was it. Like that across the line, that's what it was. You did not have emotions. You did not show emotions. Even if you were happy, even if you were happy, you could not express that. It was crazy.
Why are you happy? Why are you sad? Yes.
Yes. But Mary, I want to ask.
Sorry, I have a quick question in reference to what you guys were just talking about. Like, how did you guys work through that now that you're grown women?
Well, I have a counselor now. But I mean, for me, I can say, and it's not just me. I think it was, it's my age, my era, where I lived, my neighborhood, my community. That's just how it was. We were not allowed to express ourselves. We were not allowed to ask questions, which in turn caused some really serious issues, for all of us. I was an adult and I had to learn to deal with my emotions and, my feelings. And, by the time I got to the point of understanding, that my childhood was an issue, I found myself in a relationship that was filled with domestic violence. So I had to deal with issues from my childhood. I had to deal with the marriage that was filled with abuse. For me, it was traumatic. It was hard and it was crazy. But my childhood took me into my adult years of trying to work through that and figure it out. I'm 46 years old today, and I can say I'm in a healthy place right now. But it took some time to sit through and unravel that. Because when you become an adult and, you don't know how to express yourself, you don't know how to have a conversation, you don't know how to be real. That's a hard thing. It really is. So it affected me traumatically. And I think a part of it, a huge problematic part of it, was that we didn't even realize that something was wrong with the way that we were being treated and being taught. We didn't realize until our adult years that something was wrong with telling a child, be quiet, sit down, shut up, don't ask questions. We and I know I myself personally, I had to come to that point to where I realized and I knew and I understood that it was wrong not to be able to express myself when I was 6 and 7 years old. And that truly had an effect on me. So another part of the problem was that it was normal for us and we didn't even realize that it was an abnormal thing that we had become used to. And by the time most of us were adults and we had children, we had to not do the same things to our children that were done to us.
It sounds really familiar, like the historical trauma that leads to the generational trauma. Mm-hmm. Like, you guys being taken from your lands and being brought over here. And then being broken down, like us guys being taken from our lands into these reservations, these boarding schools, and being told not to share or not to show or not to feel, So it's really similar. We're really similar in so many ways.
My grandfather was in World War II. He was in the Navy. And he did not talk about it at all. My grandfather was actually on the boat. He was at Pearl Harbor. He was behind the boat that was torpedoed or destroyed. He and his brother, but he never talked about it. Daddy never said a word. He would just say it was horrible. So he never expressed his feelings and emotions about, what he went through during the war, during his childhood. My grandfather picked cotton when he was a child. He never talked about it. There were things that I did not know about him until after he was deceased. There are some things that I didn't know about my grandmother until she was deceased. There are just some things that were just not talked about, how they were raised, the horrible things that they went through, through their childhood with racism and everything like that. So they didn't talk about the things that were done to them, but we still had to deal with the effects of what was done to them because it was coming out, with the way that we were treated. So it was really hard. It was traumatic. I think traumatic is the word to use with that. Carrie?
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I think there's something, when you look at the MMIW crisis and when you look at the prolific rate that Black women are going missing as well, I think there's a lot to say about what Mary said about being taken away from your land. I think land is it's so tied to identity, like your environment, your culture is so tied to identity. And when you don't have that, or when you've been deprived of that, or that's like your humanity is being stripped from you.
Yes.
Like that's your home. That is not just an eviction. That's like a spiritual eviction when you're ripped from your land. So I feel like it always starts with like the dehumanization. So when, Indigenous women and Black women, us not going missing, we get lost. It's that type of dehumanization, because now, we live in capitalist America, so everything's tied to land. It's like, oh, you don't even have land, or you don't even have property, so like you're not important. So yeah, you get lost, not missing. You don't get to be missing. So I just think that is really, really powerful. And I think that I think experience-wise, I think that Indigenous people and Black people share an incredible level of empathy with each other. And you can kind of already see that in the post-Civil War era, and even a little bit in the antebellum area. There was a lot of intermingling between the two, because I think that there is a united narrative there. And that's something that I feel like definitely needs to move forward in the future, because, at the end of the day, like, we have to unite, because it's crazy out here.
Yes. So, Mary, for your program, the youth program, is there a way for listeners to donate to your program? Is there anything that listeners could provide for the young people? Like, is there anything that the young people may need? Any supplies or anything like that?
I don't really have that set up right now. We've just been using the my PayPal. But if we are looking for art supplies. So if anybody wants to donate some canvas and some paint and paint brushes, right? Because that's one project that we're going to start working on with the youth shelter right now. And that's an immediate, like, and then we do have a little bit resources for, like, if a kid needed some shoes or something, but we don't often, like, we don't, I guess you could say it's not in our RAM, mm-hmm. But we try to help where we can. And then if, like I said, if somebody wanted to help out in that sense, I'll put my P.O. box or, my address on this chat. And if they want to donate something like that, it would be greatly appreciated to just mail it out.
Okay.
And then, so one of I'll type that when we're done talking. So one of the things that we're doing with the paint projects, So I like to really work with doing writing exercises and expression of art, any art, whether it's music, poetry, painting. One of the things that the kids at the youth shelter requested was to have the canvases and I'm sorry. One of the things was the painting project, and I'm sorry, I need a minute.
Oh, no problem. So I want to share again the resource that Mary shared with us previously. It's Trailing LMA, TRAILING, LMAELLAMAE, and Trailing LMA can be found on Facebook.
Man, I've been really having this bad cough, and it's not good. It's not fun. Anyways, like I was saying, we like to do through the art, and then we're gonna start doing some collaborations with Ground Control, www.groundcontrol.com. Guy's name is Kyle Mesta. He's building this indoor skating park here in Pine Ridge. He's been a long time youth advocate, and so that's where we also want to entwine that art. He tried to do the hip hop. He didn't. I thought he was good, but he didn't have that confidence in himself. But every time I see him, I'm like, dude, just drop it, man. But so he has this building that he secured. So he always offers a space for me to come and utilize. So we're going to start going through with Kyle and Ground Control. Super cool guy. And the youth shelter, like I said, I keep going back to the youth shelter and to the JDC. We haven't really gotten into the JDC. We tried to do a community garden, but they're scared. You know how that goes. So, art supplies, what we need. Speakers, laptop, mics, things like that. If we could get things like that, that would be cool.
Okay. And we will share the address when you put it in the chat. I want to ask you, as you're working with the young people, I guess it would be with some of the young people who've been with you the longest. Have you seen a difference in their self-esteem, in their confidence level? Have you seen a difference in their behaviors? Not in a sense of a good behavior or bad behavior, but in a sense of just growing within themselves. So have you seen the positive effects that you would like to have come about in a program?
I definitely do. And especially in the long-term kids that have been with us for a couple years, I see them utilizing their voice more, speaking up for what they believe in and what they feel. And I've also come across a couple of rappers this go around, So building that confidence. I had one girl, we took a group of kids to Yellowstone like a month ago or something. And I had one girl come up to me and she's like, "Hey, Mary, I want to be a rapper. Will you support me?" And I'm like, "Dude, let's go," So just little things like that. Mm-hmm. And then also, I feel like we gave them enough resources and enough safe spaces for when we come back. I had one kid last week tell me, my mom and dad were fighting. So what did you do? How did you react? I walked away because it angers me. So I walked away. I took a walk and I played basketball. He did something. He utilized his time in a positive way. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling like we're moving some mountains here.
That is awesome. And I love the concept of allowing the kids to make their own decisions, to allow them to have their own projects, make their choices, and and go forward, with the adult supervision. But I think it's awesome to let them have that freedom and let them feel their way through. That's something I can say as children in my generation or where I was, we did not have that. We didn't have the confidence to grow up and move on in our lives and make those proper decisions. I believe that there are some things that some of us got into we wouldn't have if we were led in that right way, with the adult supervision teaching us and showing us how to use our freedom, how to adapt and move in freedom instead of taking that freedom away, because it was taken away from us. We didn't have a voice. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. I want to ask you, just as you are moving forward in your advocacy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives, do you open a door for the young people to help in the advocacy and awareness efforts, or is it more of just empowering, the young people to make the right decisions within themselves, or do they actually help with the awareness efforts? Do you think that that's too much for them?
I think it's a little bit of both, giving them both sides. I also don't think it's too much. I feel like they need to hear these things in order to, make better decisions. But a lot of the advocating work that we do is entwined with our youth work, so they might not realize it, but they're advocating too. You know what I mean? So it goes hand in hand as far as I can see it goes hand in hand.
Yes. So listeners, I want to share the mailing address that Mary shared with us, and then Carrie, I'll go to you for a question or comment. If you would like to support the youth program that Mary is working with, if you would like to send in some art supplies or send in donations or some of the other items that they may need, microphones and things such as that, the address is P.O. Box, P.O. 894, Pine Ridge, South Dakota, 57770. And Mary, should anything in the mail be directed to you?
Yeah, we would just tag it Mary Weasel Bear, We Tony Waka, P.O. Box 894, Pine Ridge, South Dakota, 57770.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Carrie, do you have a question or a comment?
I want to say to young people, especially Latino, Latina, Indigenous, Chicano, Chicana, and African American and Black young people, and people who also outside of that you can be whoever you want to be, because we are so inundated by what we're deemed to be or how we're perceived by society at large, and we start seeing ourselves like that, and that's not necessarily the case. Like, everyone has a choice. You can choose to be that, but that's not naturally who you are.
Yes.
And I think, because the way the mind works is we have who we want to be, who we are meant to be. Basically, I guess you could think of it as destiny, but then there's society, and then there's who we are in society, how we move throughout society and how we think we should be given the society we're in. But when you are a marginalized group of people and that society is not controlled by you, it gets harder and harder and harder to find who you are and who you want to be. So what I would say to young people of marginalized backgrounds is or underrepresented backgrounds, I would say focus on discovering who you are, focus on what's important, focus on trying to figure out what's important to you, because if you don't know what's important to you, then it's hard to take it's hard to take moves in the right direction. So focus on what you feel like is important. Because I think a lot of us now, we were in the age of social media, Instagram, TikTok. We get on social media. We're like, oh, that looks cool. I want to do that. Well, why? You need to figure that out so you can move in the right direction, and it can be fulfilling for you because because now it's like, oh, young people are like, I want to chase that paper, I want to get the bag, and it's like the bag is good within certain realms, but like you want to be happy at the end of the day, and what that means is like you need to feel fulfilled with whatever you're doing.
Yes.
Because money, like you reach a threshold, like after you get a certain amount of money, it's like what's next? Like you're gonna get bored.
Right.
So you need to be happy.
Right. There are a lot of people with a lot of money and they are miserable. Money is not the end all be all. Money is a tool that can help you. It can help you move forward. It can help you help others, but it's not the end all be all. So you need to have something more than that. Mary, I want to ask you, you're doing so much with the youth and so much with the advocacy efforts for missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives. What do you have planned next? There's already so much that you're doing already, I know, but what's next for you?
So I'm going to be doing a couple different classes like I was talking about earlier. One of the things that I really want to touch on and that I've really been doing research on is lateral violence. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I feel like everybody in the world needs to know about. But so I'm going to be doing these six classes. And then October, I'll be going out to Washington, D.C. to Gonzaga High School, where I'll be presenting at their Indigenous Peoples Day. And then out here on Pine Ridge, I'm just kind of waiting around for the kids because I know there's a couple families that want to organize a run around the reservation. Mm-hmm. And it's been in the talk for about a month and a half. We were trying to do it in early September, but we had a little setback. But, October's Indigenous Peoples Month, so maybe October would be a good month to do a bike ride for a lot of the families that have been affected by MMIW.
And for listeners who don't know what it is, can you explain what lateral violence is?
Lateral violence. Okay, so from my perspective, I'll just give a little example. Lateral violence would be, I guess you could kind of even say it'd be racism. But if I went to a border town and I went into the store, right? So ladies following me around, start saying things to me. Oh, they're dirty Indian. Get out of here. You're not going to buy anything. Get that a lot. That's a form of lateral violence. Mm-hmm. For here on the reservation, a lot of lateral violence I see within the tribal government is how we have these leaders who are down talking each other or criticizing each other. It's just people working against each other instead of with each other. Mm-hmm. That's my perspective, Mm-hmm. So.
Well, we want to thank you so much for being with us on tonight, Mary. We thank you so much for coming back, and I ask that you would come back again in the future. We are just under the hour, so I want to ask you both ladies just to give your final words for the evening to the listeners. What you want to leave the listeners with on tonight. Carrie, I'll ask you to go first, and then Mary, you can close us out for the evening.
I think about what Mary was saying when she was saying that a lot of the young people, they come from broken homes. And when you come from a broken home, it's like that brokenness, you kind of carry it with you. Mm-hmm. And I say that from experience. And that brokenness, it really impacts your self-image. Like, what you see when you look in the mirror is really impacted because you don't feel whole when you look in the mirror when you come from a broken home. So I want to say to the women that are coming from broken homes, I want to say you are beautiful, you are strong, you are powerful, you could be who you want to be. You deserve to have dreams. Not typical. What can I say? Like, if you want to, take the more route of traditional or I guess kind of like the societal expectation of like what women should be doing, the mainstream expectation, that's fine if that's who you are. If you feel like that's who you are, that's fine. But I want to say that if you don't, like, it may be hard and it may be a journey, but you can find who you are and you can find what makes you happy. And you don't necessarily have to do that if you don't feel like that's who you are. And you can know, you're like, oh, well, how do I know? If you do something and it makes you feel unhappy, then that's not you.
Right.
So, like, there's nothing wrong with being a mother is one of the most regal and greatest honors on the planet. So I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying that, like, you can be who you want to be. And for the young men, there's a quote I think about from Cicely Tyson. There were a lot of situations in history where you did not have, for especially Indigenous and Black men, there's a lot of situations in history where you didn't have a choice but to go or to leave because you were being separated or you were being sold or you had to go there for whatever reason. But now, like, you could take your place and you can be, that person for your family. And that might be something you have to work towards because of everything you went through. And, coming from a broken home, you feel broken, but you could still be, like that man. So that's what I want to say to, like, young people coming from broken homes. Like, just because you come from a broken hood doesn't mean that your womanhood or your manhood is broken. Like, you can put it back together and you can, like, make a new you.
Yes. Mary, your final words for the evening?
I hope that my message and what I shared this evening, like, people take something positive from it. I also hope that people see the fight and the healing that's entwined within it to combat MMIW. And ultimately, at the end of the day, regardless of where or who we are, where we come from, at the end of the day, we're all human. And I feel like we need to start treating each other as human instead of just, she's an Indian lady, she's a Black lady,
Yes.
We're humans.
Yes.
And we all bleed red. We all have the same hearts, most of us. And then another thing I want to say is I appreciate everyone who's listening. I appreciate you, Miss Tia, for giving me these opportunities to put our message out there. And another one, I want to remind everybody that life is sacred. We choni welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mary. I thank you again. Thank you, Carrie, for being here this evening. Listeners, I want to leave you with a short excerpt from The Woman's Part by Art Solomon. Woman is the center of the wheel of life. She is the heartbeat of the people. She is not just in the home, but she is the community. She is the nation. Luv Bay, if you would like to catch up on previous episodes from the program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. Thank you so much for joining Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. In Luv Bay, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Good evening.